So good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the Provincial Office webinar. I hope you're all safe and well. My name is Andrew Rydell, and I'm the Provincial Deputy Grand Secretary. To today's session, New and Young Masons clubs are nothing new. The Connaught Club, the New and Young Masons Club in London, is some 13 years old now. And there are very successful clubs all over the country. The Adair Club in the province of Somerset and the Colonnade Club in South Wales are two which spring to mind. There are a number of successful clubs in this province, the newest being the Corinthian Club in the Chorley and Leyland group. Whilst there's no set form or agenda for these clubs, UJLE, with the help of a few of the more established clubs, set up a conference and forum for sharing best practice, ideas and resources for the clubs. The man who oversees that is most excellent companion Gareth Jones, 3rd Grand Principal and Provincial Grand Master of South Wales. And it's a pleasure to welcome him here today. Gareth, thank you for being here. Welcome to the province of West Lancashire. First of all, how are you and how have you been spending your time recently?
Well, thank you very much indeed, Andrew, and thank you, brethren, for the invitation to join you today. Not the first time I've had the pleasure of joining West Lancashire recently, because I was delighted to be present at the launch of the Corinthian Club fairly recently. I'm fine, thank you. Very well, as is my family. Like all of you, I'm sure, frustrated and unsettled and feeling like everybody, you know, in these strange and uncertain times, someone who is desperately missing his Freemasonry. Especially so in Wales, of course, because where I live, because we've been banned from having any sort of Masonic meetings since March, as a result of the laws in Wales and the devolution settlement. What have I been doing for the last 6 months? Well, as Andrew rightly said, I'm Provincial Grand Master of a fairly sizable province of 5,500 Masons here in South Wales, and I'm also 3rd Grand Principal of Supreme Grand Chapter. So there's no shortage of meetings to attend. There's no shortage of things to deal with, admin to catch up on, and I've become quite an expert at Zoom and Microsoft Teams and you know, you name the video conference or audio facility that exists, and I've basically been using it probably just about every day actually over the last 6 months. There's been something to deal with, something to crop up, because like your Provincial Grand Master, whom I know well, there's always stuff to do to keep a big and busy province going. And as far as Supreme Grand Chapter is concerned, there are always things for the rulers to be doing. And you'll have seen the latest of that this week when the Grand Principals took a decision to suspend all Royal Arch activity in England for the next, for the next 4 weeks at least, but for the foreseeable future. So there's been plenty to do. At a personal level, there's a spaniel around here somewhere that always needs walking, and she's just been out for her very long and energetic walk today. And there's a couple of grandchildren that need ferrying to and from schools. My daughter is a deputy head teacher of a large secondary school, and my son-in-law is a police officer. So they're essential workers, and we've been stepping into the breach there. So plenty to do. My garden's never looked so pristine. My study has never been so tidy. The house has never been so clean. My car has never had so much attention. But like everybody, these are just little stopgaps really to fill the time until we can hopefully, God willing, get us back to some sort of normality with our Freemasonry, which I'm, like you, missing very, very dearly.
Absolutely, thank you. You alluded to your role as third Grand Principal in particular. Would you mind just kind of going through your responsibilities in that role?
Yeah, it's very interesting, you know. I used to describe when I was in work and going through the various levels of authority, I used to describe it as the receding horizon of authority. Because at every level in any organization, you always assume that the real power is at the next level up. And then you get there and you think, no, it's not at this level, it must be at the next level up again. And then you get there and no, it must be. And then you get to the top and you realize actually that the real power in any organization is right down in the bowels of that organization. And Freemasonry is exactly the same. Because as all the rulers will tell you, basically what we do is what we're told to do. Because the real power in any organization is in the hands of those who control the administration, who control the day-to-day running of an organization. And that, as far as Freemasonry and as far as Supreme Grand Chapter is concerned, is with the Committee of General Purposes and its president, excellent companion, Professor Stephen Tucker. So the real power is there, and of course in the various chapters that we are lucky enough to have within our provinces. Rulers' role is very much about taking certain decisions about appointments and about the sort of strategic objectives, if you like, of the organization. So, for example, we take decisions on who would be the next Grand Superintendent in any province. We would take decisions on the most senior Supreme Grand Chapter Grand Ranks in England and Wales. We would take decisions on things like the strategic future of the organization. But in terms of its day-to-day running, I would be lying to you if I said that the rulers have a real control over what happens in Royal Arch Masonry. Of course, the real joy of being a ruler in any organization and in any of our orders is that great joy that you have from visiting provinces, from visiting chapters in provinces, from taking part in, you know, the most significant ceremonies and meetings that our provinces and chapters have. And I've had the greatest of pleasures in installing 3 of our Grand Superintendents, in attending a number of centenaries and bicentenaries, and in attending quite a number of provincial meetings where I get a chance not only to speak as I am today, but also to meet lots and lots of people and to listen to them about what they think are the big issues for Royal Arch Masonry for its future. So, you know, a pretty wide range of staff, but as I say, I'd be disillusioned, I think, if I believed that we had a handle on the day-to-day running of the organization. It's much more about representational, ambassadorial leadership role.
You've been involved with the New England Masons Club movement now for a number of years, and heading up the kind of centralized advisory section. How do you kind of describe that that framework? That it's kind of a conference stroke group.
Yeah, it's very light touch, isn't it?
Mm.
And purposely so. You know, UGLE and Supreme Grand Chapter support very much the existence of New and Young Masons clubs in our provinces and more recently in our districts around the world. We now have something like 42 New and Young Masons clubs in total. And when I started my involvement, there were, I think, 17. Incidentally, I'm not claiming any credit for that. That is entirely down to the provincial Grand Masters around the country that have seen the benefits of having New and Young Masons clubs and have then taken steps to establish them in their areas. So we're very supportive of New and Young Masons clubs, but we've never believed that they should be, as it were, controlled by the centre. And in that way, they're very different from the university scheme. University scheme was very much a creature that was created from a top-down perspective, whereas New and Young Masons clubs have very much been a sort of bottom-up creation from within the provinces and, as I say, now the districts around the world. So the central coordination, if you like, of New and Young Masons clubs has always been, and I think always should be, very, very light touch. 5 years ago, the program master asked me to act, if you like, as the liaison point between New and Young Masons clubs and the centre and the rulers and UGLE. And that is what I have sought to do without trying to exert too much influence on the way in which New and Young Masons clubs have organized themselves or the way in which they've developed. And a good example of how that has worked is in the huge variety of constitutions that exist right across the different New and Young Masons clubs. You know, some are made up of just young Masons, and some have a sort of age limit. Some are made up of New and Young Masons clubs, so with no age limit. Some limit their membership to those who are still wearing light blue aprons. Some don't. Some limit their membership to those who've been Masons for only a certain period of time. Some don't. There's a very, very wide variety of constitutions, and we have not sought to influence that at all. It's entirely up to local determination as to what, you know, your New and Young Masons club might look like. And I suppose the only arena within which I've sought to really be involved has been in the annual conference, and even then only in terms of either speaking at it or you know, being part of it, part of the organization, or arranging for, you know, other speakers to attend. Last year the Deputy Grand Master attended, and this year, of course, the Program Master was due to attend in Hertfordshire, and sadly that hasn't come about. So, you know, New and Young Masons clubs have sort of organized themselves a little bit in terms of having a central resource which has looked after things like mailing lists, things like the New and Young Masons Club's website, things like being a repository of best practice, different types of constitutions that people can call on if if new clubs are seeking to establish themselves. And you know, I'm aware that there are discussions afoot as to, you know, what that looks like in the future, and I shall keep an eye on that with a keen interest.
You alluded to the benefits of a new and young Masons club.
Yeah.
There are lots of, I'm sure many of them will forgive me for saying, there are lots of very experienced Masons in terms of the time that they have been a Mason, not necessarily the amount of life experience they have. I think that's a point. That's me being polite. New Masons, you know, they're relatively new. I joined the day after I was initiated back in 2012. I joined the Connaught Club then. But without wanting to put any words into your mouth at all, what do you think the benefits of a new Young Masons Club are?
Well, the principal benefit has to be the establishment of a sort of network of individuals, a network of brethren who have something in common. I mean, the original intention of the establishment of these clubs, and certainly when I started to be involved, was just that. We had relatively young brethren join in lodges who, you know, at least anecdotally, were then finding that they joined an organization full of people that weren't like them. And that therefore this was an opportunity for us to create a network of individuals who were more like them, and might therefore provide an opportunity for them to enjoy their Masonry more, either via social networks or via visiting, you know, with like-minded and similar types of brethren to themselves. Or indeed, you know, visiting further afield with those new friends and brethren, and there are lots of good examples of that happening. You know, with clubs visiting each other across provincial borders and the like. So, you know, why? So, I mean, I'm describing the sort of social benefits, if you like, and the Masonic retention benefits that might spring from having these clubs, because, you know, we were going through a period in the time you describe, Andrew, when we were losing, you know, 2.5% of our brethren a year. We were losing, and we were sort of sleepwalking into oblivion, and things had to be done to try and turn that situation around. And this was, you know, just one of them that we believed was something that was worth doing to try and stem the tide of losses that we were experiencing. So social benefits, Masonic retention benefits, most certainly. Personally, I think that they also bring, New and Young Masons clubs also bring the opportunity for us to attract more gentlemen into this fantastic order of ours, because, you know, I've seen so many examples of clubs having social functions to which they invite their friends along. And, you know, I'm absolutely 100% behind that idea. Invite their friends along, you know, who may well see that this is a group of people that they can associate with and would enjoy spending more time with, and learn more about Freemasonry that way. So, you know, yes, social benefits, yes, retention benefits, but I also think there are potential benefits to having these clubs, which encroach into the whole field of recruitment and attraction of new members.
When I was on the committee of the Connaught Club, and we were asked to help set up various different clubs all over the country, you know, some of the 17 that you alluded to.
Yeah.
One of the things that we came up quite often was I never needed a New Young Masons club or a light blue club when I was first initiated. Why do we need them now?
Yeah. Well, these are the very same people that were you're completely blind to the fact that Freemasonry had gone from 300,000 members in the early 70s to around 200,000 members in the early 2000s. You know, we are now at the level of Freemasons in England and Wales that we had in the 1920s, and you know that is something that has happened since the sort of bubble that was created in the post-war years up until the 1970s, and then burst over the years to come. I mean, you know, I've heard that very same reaction myself, and you know, I think it's fair to say that in about 2015, when you'll remember, Andrew, I'm sure, when I arranged for the New and Young Masons clubs to come and present to the Provincial Grand Masters Forum in April of that year, I was hearing similar responses from a number of very senior Masons and some Provincial Grand Masters at that time. And the rulers were absolutely determined at that time that that we would encourage as many of these New and Young Masons clubs as possible to be established. And you know, I think it's also fair to say that Provincial Grand Masters were made very well aware of that. And I think in pretty short order, actually, could see the benefits. And certainly the presentation that was made to the Provincial Grand Masters Forum that year was a sort of seminal moment because I had a lot of them then come and approach me and say, look, you know, this does actually sound pretty good. How do we go about it? And we were able to help. And you know, proof of the pudding's in eating, isn't it? You know, we now have 40 odd New and Young Masons clubs. There are very few provinces that have not had a go at establishing a club, and actually those that have, there are a tiny number. I can count on one hand where those clubs have failed and have led to the province having to sort of have another go at it.
They are heavily reliant on good people in the clubs, particularly in the formative years of a club. These are people which tend to go on to, you know, good things in masonry. And to what extent do you think being involved in a New and Young Masons club gives you that that grounding in masonry, which is just a little bit more enhanced than otherwise would have been? I mean, obviously there's the access, but what other benefits do you think there are to being involved in one as opposed to just having one?
I mean, I have absolutely no doubt at all that the involvement in a New and Young Masons club does give you more of a grounding, which will enable you to develop more in both provincial and Grand Lodge. And when I look at my New and Young Masons Club here in South Wales, the Colonnade Club, if I look at the main players in that, I'm sure you know many of them, Andrew. You know, I'm looking at a Provincial Grand Master of the future. I have absolutely no doubt whatsoever. And I have unashamedly appointed many of them to fast track provincial roles, and indeed one of the first chairman of my New and Young Masons Club is now my Provincial Grand Secretary. And the youngest Provincial Grand Secretary, I think, in the country at 34. So I have no doubt that it does help. I think access to the executive, access to the provincial Grand Master and access to the executive is one thing. But you know, if any of us as provincial Grand Masters or any of us as rulers in the Royal Arch look around the country and say, well, you know, who is there that we see as leaders of the future? Quite obviously, there are a lot of people out there that we don't know. And so being involved in a New and Young Masons Club is one way of being able to demonstrate what you can do. And you know, I don't know whether others around the country have this influence. I don't exert any influence on my club here as to who is the chairman or who is the secretary, or you know, that's entirely a matter for them. But my goodness, when they take on those roles, they can certainly demonstrate their skills and their qualities, and it's those things that then get you noticed in terms of further advancement.
They are certainly I think, as you say, a bit of a breeding ground for good people, and certainly the Connaught Club, which is one that I've got the most experience with, has seen people like Kyle Alexander and Mitch Thirlway going on to very big things. You obviously know Mitch very well from the New Masons Club. Has there been any? It's a very light touch, the New and Young Masons Club forum and kind of your liaison role, as you said, it's very light touch. Has there been any pushback at all to having a centralized kind of contact?
Well, it depends what you mean, I suppose, Andrew. There's been, you will know well, that there has been pushback to any formalization of that role, and there have been various. I mean, I suppose there are. The truth is there are various views as to whether or not that central coordination is either necessary or desirable. Personally, I think it is both necessary and desirable to have something there. For example, if it didn't exist, you know, how would UGLE contact all of the New and Young Masons clubs? Because there'd be no sort of central repository of information or central repository of email addresses or contact names. There would be no way of sensibly organizing an annual conference, for example, without having that sort of information about, you know, about who to contact. But it's true to say that there are various views about you know, what that central role should be, and you know, UGLE and Supreme Grand Chapter will run with whatever New and Young Masons clubs decide for themselves. As I say, our view is that we support the clubs, and however best you want to organize yourselves, or indeed not organize yourselves, is a matter for you.
I was thinking particularly in terms of the reorganisation which has just happened with the university scheme, in terms of that being taken in very much into the membership group. Yeah. Is that something you can see happening with the New and Masons Club, or do you think it will remain very kind of, like you say, light touch?
I think it depends on what the clubs themselves want to be for the future. If they want to be more formalised and have more of a formalised structure, then I think it is highly likely that it would need the strength of the Board of General Purposes behind it. If it wants to continue in this very sort of loose confederation, you know, of clubs, well, I see no particular need.
Got a question from Kevin Poynton, asking about the emphasis or effort being made to involve partners of these new and young Masons, and to include them in the organisation, and to have them, involved with events, and even bring them in.
Well, Kevin, you've touched on a very important subject. I mean, I think the answer is yes. And not only do I think that partners and friends and families are important to new and young Masons clubs, I think they're important to Masonry. And I think we go back to the days when Dad went out to lodge and never involved anybody else and never spoke about it, at our peril, really, because life's not like that anymore, is it? If I think back to my great grandfather, was a Mason in Cardiff, and his wife didn't even know he was a Mason until he died, and he was a pretty senior Mason. When I joined Freemasonry, which is now 37 years ago, the involvement for my family and my wife was next to nothing, really. Maybe an annual ladies' night, and that was it. We just can't operate like that anymore. We have to involve our wives and partners and families and friends more. And actually, there's benefits for us anyway, isn't there? Because the benefits are that people get to know more about what we do. And a great example of that has been during this dreadful lockdown period, when a huge amount of work has been done to help our Masons, their families, and our local communities, and that's been noticed. That has been noticed, not just by the media, but it's been noticed by people who have, as a result of it, said, "Hey, that could be an organisation I wouldn't mind joining." Now, I don't know what the situation is like in West Lancs, but I can tell you that in South Wales, we now have over 100 gentlemen who have expressed an interest in joining Freemasonry since March, and have expressed that interest unsolicited by members. So they've done so via our website, via our membership group, and the vast majority of those have said they want to join because they've seen what we've been doing during lockdown, and we are therefore an organisation that they want to join. So there are huge benefits to us, to our involving our wives, our friends, our families, and our communities in everything that we do, and we've just got to do more of that.
Speaking of the involvement, New and Young Masons, as you say, have all sorts of different constitutions and different programs. Are there any events or socials or ideas that particularly stand out to you as being excellent practice or excellent type of event?
I mean, you could probably get a better answer to this question by asking everybody around the table here. I mean, of course, I've seen good examples in my own province, but I don't want to claim that they have a monopoly on good ideas. It's been great to see New and Young Masons clubs visiting a bit more widely than just within their provinces. So coming, I mean, my club makes a point of coming to a quarterly communication in Grand Lodge every year, and the last couple of times they've done that, they've invited their friends and families and partners along, and they make a bit of a social time of it. I try and meet them for a beer, and it gives them a sort of wider perspective. It's that wider perspective point that you made earlier, Andrew, about that being a member of the club gives you. So I just encourage, as much social activity as possible, and the broader that can be, not just, for example, in the province, then the better.
Without wanting to again put too many words into your mouth, what if somebody is thinking of setting up a young Masons club? What do you think is the most important thing that they should do, and what should they do first?
Well, they must have the support of their provincial Grand Master and his executive, because without that sort of overt leadership from the PGM and his team, they're going to struggle from the outset. So they need that support. They need the support of the provincial office, because they will need access to all sorts of information that the provincial office has, like names and addresses and ages and length of tenure within lodges and all that sort of stuff. So they absolutely need that central support. And the next thing they need, really, you've already alluded to, which is good quality men who are going to step up into the principal roles, because every club is going to need a chairman and a secretary and potentially a treasurer and a social secretary and all that sort of stuff. And you need good quality, enthusiastic individuals that are going to take those roles on. And frankly, once you can count on those two things, it's a question of just hard work. And I'm teaching you to suck eggs here. Many of you will know this a lot better than I do, because I never had the pleasure of joining one of these things when I started my masonry. And indeed, I didn't. Although as an assistant provincial Grand Master, I was responsible for setting up some universities lodges here in South Wales. Before then, we didn't have any of those things. I do come from a schools lodge background, so I was involved in the Federation of Schools Lodges and the like for many years. No, I think the key points are, it's all about people, isn't it? It's all about getting people to support you and getting the right leaders in the right roles.
We have a range of different clubs in the province, being a province which effectively is 150 miles from end to end, almost. We have a group system within the province, and some of those groups, most of those groups have a club themselves. Some of them have them across combined groups. Just doing the people who are on the chat, can you just put your hand up if you are aware of a club in your group? You just wave if you are aware of your club in a club in your group. So there's maybe 50%, something like that. And of those secretaries and scribes, how many of you forward communications from those groups to your members, from the New Young Masons clubs to your members? So slightly fewer still. Communication is obviously incredibly important for these, but also the method of communication is as well. And younger Masons communicate in very different ways to older, newer Masons. What do you think is the best way of planning a good communications mix?
Well, I mean, and this is not a point that's limited to New and Young Masons clubs, is it? Because the demography of clubs across the country is not dissimilar to the demography of our lodges and chapters. You know, I constantly say to people, you can't assume that if you've told people something that they've heard it, and you can't assume that the way you like being communicated with is the way that other people like being communicated with. Um, so we've got to use as many channels as we possibly can to make sure that we get our message across. Um, you know, especially in times like these, I have a mantra that I use here, which is you can't communicate too much, and you can't communicate in too many ways, because sure as eggs, if you communicate in one or two or three ways, there'll be someone who doesn't feel that they've been engaged or doesn't feel that they've been involved because you haven't used the channel that they particularly appreciate. Of course, you know, during these difficult times, electronic communications has become more prevalent. It's become more important. It's become something that, you know, as we said at the outset, has become a bit of a way of life. But equally, I'm equally sure that every single one of you will have members in your lodges that do not like to be communicated with like this, and actually will refuse to be communicated with in this way. And so we've got to still think about older methods, or more traditional methods of communicating with people at times when, you know, face-to-face communication is very, very difficult. But going back to, you know, some semblance of normality for the future, I think we will probably learn from this period of time, and we will probably use a number of the methods that we've employed during the pandemic on an ongoing basis. But equally, we shouldn't forget that there are lots of our brethren, you know, who don't feel engaged at the moment, and who will appreciate, you know, getting back to much more face-to-face communications for the future. So I think the bottom line, Andrew, is you know, you can't communicate too much. You can't communicate in too many ways. I think we've got to just try as hard as we can to use as many channels as possible.
Speaking of the pandemic, clearly the New and Young Masons or members of New and Young Masons clubs, and New and Young Masons, if they're not members of New and Young Masons clubs, are in a good position in terms of their demographic, generally speaking, to really assist the older members who are more vulnerable at this time. To what extent do you think we are in a sweet spot, so to speak, in terms of really engendering the good values of Freemasonry in a very practical way very early? And do you think that Masonry will be stronger for the because of the current situation when we emerge out of it?
Well, I've seen it happen. I mean, you describe it almost perfectly, Andrew. I've seen it happen, that you know, wonderful examples of individuals stepping up to the plate and providing help for their members, their friends, their families, their communities, and a lot of those brethren are members of New and Young Masons clubs. Now, is it because they're new members of New and Young Masons clubs that they're doing that? No, it's because they're Masons that they're doing that, and it's because they're the sort of people that want to step up to the plate to help people, that they've also in the past become movers and shakers in their local New and Young Masons clubs. it's almost, it's the old John F. Kennedy question, isn't it? Ask not what you can do, ask not what your country can do for you, etc. So I think Masonry is demonstrating what it can do in difficult times, and part of that is demonstrated by the point I made earlier about the number of individuals that are expressing an interest in joining us. The more difficult question is the final one you asked, which is, do I think Masonry will be stronger in the future? And this is a very tricky question, isn't it? We will all have heard stories of individuals who are saying, well, I'm paying my money and I'm not getting anything for it now. I'm not sure I want to continue doing that. I haven't heard many stories like that, I have to say, but I have heard some. It's why we've undertaken a number of surveys in centrally, and I know a number of provinces have undertaken a number of surveys to determine how many of their members are likely to give up, if not their being a member of the craft and the Royal Arch, their memberships of lodges and chapters. And I've sort of been quite heartened with the results that I've seen, because it doesn't look from the returns that we're getting as if many of our members are proposing to vote with their feet. And if that's true, and I sincerely hope it is, then I think, yes, we will be stronger for the future, because there's a lot of pent up frustration out there in our membership, isn't there? For people who can't meet. This is an organization that we hold so dear, and meetings that that we're missing so much, and social intercourse that we're missing so hugely, that when it can start again, I foresee a huge groundswell of pent up frustration being relieved as a result of that. So I think it will be stronger for the future. I sincerely hope that some of the predictions that I've seen, some of the gloomier predictions that I've seen, that I don't hold with, but then I'm a natural sort of optimist, really. I sincerely hope that they will not come to pass, and I sincerely hope that once we do get back to our meetings and seeing each other again and undertaking our ceremonies, that we will see that pent up frustration and emotion will bear fruit. But it is absolutely important. It is absolutely key that to enable us to do that, we all do what we're doing, which is keep in touch with people and make sure that people know that they are valued as members, and they are being looked after as members during these difficult times, because people have a long memory, don't they? And if people don't feel engaged and involved and looked after and valued during these difficult times, then maybe they won't feel quite so positive towards the future.
It would be remiss of me not to talk a little bit about the Royal Arch, and I know not everybody on the chat today is a Royal Arch Mason.
Really?
I suspect. Sorry. Well, with your reaction in mind, what do you think is the best thing to say to somebody to encourage them to join the Royal Arch?
Look, the Royal Arch is a beautiful, enjoyable, fun degree to join. I'm looking around at the pictures of some of your members. I know quite a few, and I can see some very notable Royal Arch Masons amongst your audience today. It is a wonderful order to join, which not only, I know we all say, it provides the culmination of pure and ancient masonry, and it finishes off the story and all that sort of stuff. And all that is true. But actually more than that, it is just such a wonderful, enjoyable order to join, which if you're interested in either the social, the historical, the biblical context, or indeed high quality ceremonial and just wonderful companionship, then the Royal Arch really is something that you are missing out on if you haven't joined. Your province is one which is doing reasonably well in terms of its, what I describe as the conversion rate from craft to Royal Arch, but it could do better. I know that your provincial Grand Master, who is also your Grand Superintendent, agrees with me that there are things that we could be doing to improve that rate of conversion from craft to Royal Arch, and anything that we can do, then we should. Andrew, that in South Wales we have, I'm just conflating two issues here for you. In South Wales we have a Royal Arch chapter that is made up of members of our New and Young Masons Club. The members of the club came to me some years ago and asked if they could form a new lodge. And I said, no, I didn't want them to form a new lodge because I didn't want lodges around the province to be diluted by losing all its young men to a central New and Young Masons lodge. But what I said they could do, if they were minded, was to create a New and Young Masons Club chapter, which they subsequently did. And it has been an absolute roaring success. It draws in members from craft lodges right across the province. It currently has 3 principals with an average age of 32. And it's an absolute joy to visit. And well, I'm not visit, I'm a member. In fact, I was the Primus first principal. But it's an absolute joy to watch them undertaking first-rate Royal Arch ritual, and to see these young, relatively new Masons undertaking, the most difficult and complex ritual in the most beautiful way is a great joy to behold. I can see Colin Rowling nodding because I know he knows it well.
Gareth, thank you very much for your time today. It's been an absolute pleasure to talk to you. I'm going to hang around and speak to anybody that's got any administration or procedural questions. But thank you very much for being here. I hope we can see you again in person soon in the province of West Lancashire. It will be a pleasure to meet you again. And thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much indeed. And I also see Paul Renton is here. So thank you, Paul. It's great to see some senior members from the province attending this sort of event, because it really does demonstrate that the province, supports this very important initiative. It's been a great joy to be with you, Andrew. Thank you for organising it. And to you all, brethren and companions, can I say, stay safe, stay well. And I'm missing you very much. I can't wait to see you all in the not too distant future.
Thank you, Gareth.
Thank you, brethren.
Right. I have unlocked the microphones. Andrew Thompson, I've just seen that you've got your hand up. Do you want to ask a question? Was it for Gareth?
No, it was for you. It was
oh, right,
for
okay.
you. So I haven't received any yearbooks yet. I'm just wondering, is that a problem? Should I be worried now or not?
No, you shouldn't be worried about it. Some people have, as the similar answer to the one I gave last week, actually. Some people have received them. More people have received them now. They were posted the week before last, but in order to save money, we used the cheapest possible postage. Now, there's second class parcel on a commercial business one, which I didn't realise was kind of up to 14 days delivery. So, which is why some people have had them and some people haven't had them. But it will be with you soon. And that goes to everybody.
Do I get all of the copies, or are they sent to you?
Yeah, so secretaries will be receiving 3 for each lodge that they are secretary of. Scribees will be receiving 1 for their chapters.
That's fine. I'm assuming it's coming out on very slow mail, so that's fine. I didn't know whether to report it as lost or missing or whatever else yet, but no, that's fine. I'll keep on.
No, they will be with you soon, and I'm hoping it will be. Well, I was hoping that they'd be here yesterday or today, but clearly not.
Yeah,
so a little bit frustrating.
I know the Yorkshire people will be. They'll have the guards out protecting Yorkshire from Lancashire Post, so I guess that won't help either.
And if all else fails, I think Phil Preston has got a rather large stock, so you can.
I don't worry. I'll see it when I get it. Thanks, Andrew.
Phil, why are you waving?
They haven't made it this far either, Andrew, so don't worry about it.
Well, any other questions? I'm just. Everybody seems quite subdued this afternoon. If there's no other questions or points, then I shall see you all next week. Next week we have Christine Chapman, the Grand Master of the Honourable Fraternity of Ancient Freemasons, HFAF, one of the women's orders of Masonry. So Christine Chapman, the Grand Master of that, will be coming along. Neil, I can see you've got your hand up. Do you want to say something?
Yeah, with the intervention of the Grand Master reimposing the temporary suspension, at least until the 2nd of December. If he lifts it again on the 2nd of December, does the Provincial Grand Master's temporary suspension go back into place?
I knew this question was coming. And the answer is, I don't know yet. Because I suspect that you and I are possibly the only people that have thought of it. We don't know. I suspect that if the situation in West Lancashire is exactly the same as it was, as in, I understand that the plan is that after the lockdown, they will revert to regional lockdowns and the tiered system. If the majority of the province remains in tier 3, clearly no meetings upon tier 2 or tier 3. Clearly meetings aren't possible, so the provincial Grand Master will still exercise his prerogative and impose a suspension again. In terms of the technical side of that, I'm not sure how it'll work. I don't know if London have even thought about it, but I would. It will depend on what state the province is put into, or the different areas of the province are put into, as to quite what will happen after that. Clearly, if the tiered system is reimposed and the majority of the province is in tier 2 or tier 3, meetings aren't going to be possible anyway. So lodges will be still the emergency power for lodges to suspend themselves. It goes in, and that finishes on the 31st of December 2021. So that's still active. That's still possible for people to do. Beyond that, not sure is the answer, but I suspect that the provincial Grand Masters will retain the devolved power to do that. And like I say, if the majority of the province is still in tier 2 or tier 3, the suspension would be continued.
Andrew, would it be possible for you to allow me to share the screen just for something very briefly?
By all means, go ahead.
Okay, I'll just try and do it. It says it's disabled at the moment.
Oh, hang on.
It was just about the communication bit. No, still not happening.
You should be able to now.
Okay, I've got it. Okay. Can you see that?
Yep.
Can I just ask everybody whether this has found its way to you? We had a Royal Arch Leeds Zoom get together a little while ago now, and I emphasised this business about keeping in touch, because my real concern is with chapters meeting less than lodges would have done, or not having the organisation perhaps that some lodges have, that we put this around. I hope it has come down the wires to you via your group Royal Arch Leeds. If it hasn't, could you perhaps chase them for me? Because it really is vital, as has been said during this Zoom today, that we do need to keep in contact, either by phone, by organising Zooms, or as you'll see the last bullet point there, by arranging hopefully a bit of a presentation via your local Royal Arch assistant or your Royal Arch Leeds for chapters. That's it. Thanks very much.
No problem. Thank you, Paul. I know that the chapter that I'm first principal of has arranged something, a Zoom call just to catch up with people. It's not restricted to lodges. By all means, chapters should be doing the same things as well. So looking forward to that. If there's...
Yes, please, Andrew.
Yep, go on then, Brian.
Just a quick one. This might be another question you haven't got the answer for.
Okay.
I was approached, I was Zoomed by two of our members last week.
Right.
The acting ranks.
Yeah.
Now, because of this year, they haven't been able to activate those acting ranks. Will they carry on for another year when this is all finished with, or what? Or just finish when you finish?
I'll get back to you. It's not my call.
So that's no, you haven't got the answer then.
I haven't got the answer to that.
Okay.
I haven't got the answer to that. I'm just seeing to see if I get any messages coming in, but not at the moment. No, I haven't got it. Dave Johnson, you're waving at me.
Yes, thanks, Andrew. Very, very quickly, go back to the yearbook issue.
Yep.
Just for the guys who are having problems with the yearbooks. The delivery service that you're using to distribute them, if there's nobody at home and they're trying to deliver them, they will not leave them in your porch, and they will not leave them with a next door neighbour as your friendly postie does. They leave them at a local distribution centre. I only know that because I had a note in my post box. The actual distribution centre was a local grocery store a couple of miles away. So just keep an eye on that. And I didn't even know
the ones for group chairman may have gone because you had more books. They may have gone by a different courier. As far as I'm aware, the ones for secretaries and scribes have gone by Royal Mail.
Right.
So they shouldn't be an issue. They've just gone on the very basic, slowest parcel one, cheapest social, for that reason. Because clearly it was an extra expense for the province, which so we didn't want to go overboard on to make sure people got them, as opposed to the decision regarding acting ranks is being made at the cabinet meeting in December, so we'll know more then. So that's what I'm being told. Right, I'm just having a look through. There's no other hands up on the computer. There's no more people waving at me. Installation returns. Just a question from Andrew from Barlow Moor Lodge. Installation returns were asked to send even if the installation did not take place. Then I got a message to say they haven't been. Yes, UJLE once again changed their mind. They don't want the installation returns until if it's in lodge, until the wardens have been invested. And if it's in chapter, until the installation has taken place, because obviously, in chapter the installation rolls on, so it keeps getting pushed back, whereas in lodge it's just the investiture of the wardens that comes at the first regular meeting. So hold on until either you've invested the wardens if it's in lodge, or that you've had the installation if you're in chapter. So basically, after your next, your first regular meeting or regular convocation. So those are done. Mark from 3974, it depends on when you sent it. Some of them have already been processed and sent to London, and then London told us that they didn't want them yet because they were being inundated. Others will have been, if you haven't received an email regarding it, that's how it will be the case, and that will just be held in London to do. Otherwise, it will be you will have been asked to send another one. If you haven't been asked to send a replacement, don't worry about it. If you have, send it after your next meeting. Okay, I think by the looks of it, we're already done. Just again, usual thing, please keep in touch with all your members. If you're having difficulty like that, or if you want some advice on how to set up a Zoom meeting or anything like that, please feel free to give me a ring. I'm more than happy to help you out on these things. This is the 33rd meeting for secretaries and scribes that we've done. We've been doing these for 33 weeks now. I had a count up, which I didn't realize it was that long, but there you go. So thank you very much, and I shall see you next week when Christine Chapman will be here.